The air hung thick and still, as if time itself had forgotten to move. Not air, truly, but something else. Something heavy, oppressive, almost tangible in its weight. It pressed down upon the landscape, a vast, desolate plain stretching into eternity, devoid of life, devoid of hope. The ground, if it could be called such, was not of earth or stone, but a shimmering expanse reflecting a sky not of blue, but a canvas of swirling greys and sickly yellows, a grotesque parody of the heavens. No sun, no moon, only an eternal twilight casting a dim, eerie glow over the barren field. And yet there was light, a light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Light emanated from the figures that populated this desolate expanse, their forms glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. Figures not quite corporeal, yet not entirely ethereal, caught in a state of perpetual in-betweenness. They were caught between realms, their forms shimmering with an inner luminescence that spoke of a life lived and lost. This was not heaven, nor was it hell. It was a place where time stood still, where the past and future ceased to exist. This was a place in between, a liminal space where souls lingered, unable to move on. A purgatory for souls unready for judgment, doomed to wander this desolate expanse for eternity, searching for something they could not name. And it was here in this timeless purgatory that two figures met. Their paths crossed in the endless twilight, their forms shimmering with the faint glow of lost memories and unfulfilled destinies. The first figure stood tall, his bearing as straight and unyielding in death as it had been in life. His presence was commanding, a testament to the iron will that had driven him through the turbulent times of his mortal existence. Even in this spectral form, there was an undeniable aura of authority and determination that seemed to ripple through the mist around him. His attire, though faded and ethereal, spoke of earthly power, the fine velvet of a statesman, the glint of a heavy chain of office. These were not mere trappings of vanity, but symbols of the immense influence he once wielded. The velvet, now ghostly and worn, hinted at the opulence of his former life, while the chain of office, still glinting faintly, was a stark reminder of the responsibilities and burdens he had carried. But his face, oh, his face! It was a mask of cold fury, the eyes burning with an icy fire that spoke of a deep, abiding hatred. Those eyes, once sharp and calculating, now blazed with a spectral intensity that could pierce through the very soul. They were the eyes of a man who had seen too much, endured too much, and whose spirit was now consumed by an unquenchable thirst for retribution. This was Thomas Cromwell, once Master Secretary to King Henry VIII, architect of the English Reformation, the power behind the throne. In life, he had been a man of vision and ambition, reshaping the very fabric of English society. His influence had been vast, his decisions far-reaching, and his legacy, both revered and reviled, had left an indelible mark on history. But no more. Now he was but a shade, a spectre driven by a thirst for vengeance that death itself could not quench. His once formidable presence was now a haunting reminder of the past, a ghostly figure bound by the chains of his own making. The vengeance that fueled him was not just for the wrongs done to him, but for the betrayals and injustices he had witnessed and perhaps even perpetrated. Opposite him stood another figure, regal even in its spectral form. This figure, though equally ghostly, exuded a different kind of power, one that was rooted in nobility and a once unquestioned authority. The air around this spectre seemed to shimmer with a faded grandeur, a lingering echo of a time when his word was law and his presence commanded respect and fear in equal measure. A heavy cloak, once crimson and ermine, now hung limp and faded, revealing the outline of a once imposing physique, now shrunken and gaunt. This cloak, a symbol of his royal status, had seen better days, much like the figure it adorned. The weight of the cloak seemed to mirror the burdens he had carried in life, now reduced to a mere shadow of his former self. A crown, tarnished and dull, sat askew upon his head. This crown, once a gleaming symbol of his sovereignty, now lay crooked and dim, a poignant reminder of the fall from grace. The tarnish on the crown spoke of the passage of time and the erosion of power, while its askew position hinted at the chaos and turmoil that had marked the end of his reign. Together, these two spectral figures stood as haunting embodiments of ambition, power, and the relentless passage of time. He looked every bit the king he once was, King Henry VIII, larger than life, used to wielding absolute power. Yet here in this desolate purgatory he was but a pale imitation of his former self. The arrogance, the bluster were gone, replaced by a look of fear, of utter helplessness.
You cannot hide from me, Henry.
Cromwell's voice, though it carried no physical weight, echoed across the desolate plains. Each word dripped with venom, each syllable a nail hammered into the coffin of their shared past. Henry shrank back, his spectral form flickering as if buffeted by a cold wind.
Thomas, I did what I had to do.
Did you?
Cromwell's laughter was a chilling sound devoid of any mirth, filled only with icy hatred.
Did you truly believe your own lies, or were you content to let me be the scapegoat for your own fickle whims?
He strode towards the cowering form of his former king, each step measured, deliberate. The air around him seemed to crackle with a palpable tension, a mix of anger and sorrow that had festered for years. His eyes, once filled with loyalty, now burned with a cold, unyielding resolve. With each step, Henry seemed to shrink further, his spectral form becoming more insubstantial. The once mighty king, who had commanded armies and nations, now appeared as a mere shadow of his former self, a ghostly wisp fading into the ether.
Do you remember the day, Henry? The day when the ink from your quill sealed my fate and the weight of your signature became my death sentence. The day you signed my death warrant. Did you feel a moment's hesitation, a flicker of doubt, as you condemned me to the gallows? Did you pause even for a moment to think of the years I had served you faithfully? The countless battles fought in your name, the sacrifices made for your throne.
Henry shook his head, unable to meet Cromwell's gaze. The weight of his guilt pressed down on him, a heavy shroud he could not escape.
You betrayed me, Thomas. You overstepped your bounds. You sought power that was never yours to claim.
And you repaid my loyalty with treachery. You cast aside my devotion as if it were nothing, a mere inconvenience in your quest for control. You cast me aside like a broken tool, a discarded plaything. But I am not so easily discarded, Henry. Not anymore. The bonds of loyalty you shattered have given rise to a force you cannot comprehend. But I am not so easily discarded, Henry. Not anymore. The spirit of vengeance has awakened within me, and it will not rest until justice is served.
He gestured with his hand, and the desolate landscape around them shifted, the shimmering ground rising up to form a gruesome tableau. The air grew colder, and the shadows deepened, as if the very fabric of reality was bending to his will. A scaffold, draped in black, materialized before them. It stood as a grim reminder of the past, a symbol of the finality of death and the inescapable nature of fate. Upon it lay a block of wood, stained a deep, rusty brown. The blood of the condemned had seeped into its grain, a testament to the lives lost upon its surface. And beside it, gleaming coldly in the ethereal light, lay an executioner's axe. Its blade, sharp and unforgiving, seemed to hum with a dark energy, eager to fulfill its grim purpose once more.
Do you recognize this, Henry? Do you see the instrument of your demise, the very tool that severed your life from your body? Do you remember the feel of the axe as it severed your head from your body? The cold steel biting into your flesh, the finality of that moment.
Henry let out a strangled cry, a sound of pure terror that echoed across the desolate plain. He fell to his knees, his spectral form flickering violently. The crown, tarnished and dull, rolled away from him, coming to rest at Cromwell's feet.
No, please. I was wrong, Thomas. I confess I was wrong. You were a faithful servant, a loyal friend. I don't know what came over me. The fear, the paranoia. I was not in my right mind.
Cromwell watched him, his expression unreadable.
Is that your excuse, Henry? Fear? Paranoia?
He picked up the crown, turning it over in his hands, examining the tarnished metal with a detached curiosity.
These are the tools of tyrants, Henry. Fear and paranoia. You wielded them like weapons, cutting down anyone you perceived as a threat, regardless of their loyalty or their service.
Henry's form quivered, his once regal countenance now a mere shadow of its former glory. Cromwell's eyes, cold and unyielding, bore into him. These tools, Henry, they have a way of turning on their masters. He placed the crown on the ground, the metal now seeming to pulse with a sinister energy. You see, in your fear, you did not just betray. Your friends, your allies, but you betrayed yourself. Every decision, every life you took added weight to your soul. Henry's spectral hands reached out, trembling as if trying to grasp at the fading remnants of his power. Thomas, I beg of you, show mercy. Help me find redemption. Help me restore what I have destroyed. Cromwell's expression softened for a brief moment, a flicker of the man he once was. Redemption, Henry? Do you truly believe there is a path back for you? He took a step closer, his voice a mere whisper now. The echoes of betrayal linger far longer than the memory of kindness. Suddenly, the desolate plain around them began to shift, the air growing colder, thicker, shadows lengthened, and the ground beneath Henry cracked open, revealing an abyss that seemed to stretch into infinity. This is your purgatory, Henry, an endless reflection of your deeds. As Henry's form began to sink into the abyss, he let out a final desperate plea. Thomas, please do not forsake me! Cromwell turned away, his voice carrying on the wind. Your fate was sealed by your own hand, Henry. Farewell. The abyss swallowed Henry whole, the desolate plain returning to its eerie stillness. Cromwell stood alone, the crown at his feet, a symbol of a kingdom built on fear and betrayal. He gazed into the distance, the weight of history pressing down on him. And so the echoes of betrayal continued to reverberate, a haunting reminder of a legacy tarnished by fear. Gap 3 CR